Wait for Dave.
Okay.
Well, I gotta put my food up.
That 13-year-old boy, he wasn't one of ours. Already late.
And this is tag team.
to drive.
You know,
Everybody know?
I don't know.
you need a laptop?
Which actually is better for me with all these numbers. Good afternoon. Welcome to Battle Creek Public School Board of Education meeting. Today is Monday, June the 17th, 2024. It is now 5:30 p.m. We'll now ask for the secretary to please call the roll.
Dr. Johnson?
Here.
Dr. Perry?
Present.
Nathan Graycheck?
Here.
Anna McClinney?
Here.
Charlie Fulbright?
Here.
Patty Fulbright?
Present. Okay. Introduction of our interpreters. After a few weeks off, we have worked through some difficulties. We are excited to be able to offer our Spanish interpretation of tonight's board meeting. Many thanks to our partners at Voices in Battle Creek. For those that are interested in tuning in, you can join the Zoom webinar by visiting bcps.me/BCPENESAPANOL and then selecting the language option at the bottom. Okay. All right, the chair will now entertain a motion regarding the approval of the agenda, considerations of additions or deletions.
Madam President,
Yes, trustee Fulbright.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Support.
It's been moved by trustee Fulbright, supported by trustee McClinney, that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Move down to public comment. The Battle Creek Public School Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the community to express themselves on district matters. We have two opportunities on our agenda tonight for public comment. The Board of Education requests you fill out a public participation form with contact information. As you come to the microphone, please state your name. Each statement made by a speaker shall be limited to a 3-minute duration. If the speaker represents a group, the person will be given 5 minutes to speak. Battle Creek Public Schools Board of Education will listen, take comments and questions under advisement, and not respond at this time. Public commenters will direct all comments to the Board of Education, not to staff or other participants. Do we have any public comment? Thank you. We'll now move down to reports and recommendations. 2023-2024 final budget amendments, 2023-2024 general fund final budget amendments, 2023-2024 supplemental fund final budget amendments. Brenda Benat. Please go forward, please.
All right. Do we have the presentation up?
Yep. I have to unplug you for a second. I'm going to unplug you for a second.
While he's doing that, if you just want to talk through your recommendation for the 23-24, and then I'll roll into the presentation from there.
Okay. All right, so each of you have in front of you the proposed budget for year end this year for the general fund, and there's also a separate budget for each of the supplemental funds. On the recommendation, we have the narrative. Just tells that our increase in revenue is primarily from local sources as county settlement on property taxes has gone up. Federal revenues, we've adjusted to match actual expenditures, with ESSER being the big one. And ESSER projects, the construction projects and HVAC projects aren't quite done, so we're not showing all the revenue that we still have left. So that'll be in the next budget. Increase in local sourced revenue, delinquent tax collections. We've modified all the categorical revenues for the state amounts to match up what the state is paying. Federal revenue, we've modified all the grants so the revenues will equal the expenses. Other revenue, we have an increase due to GASB implementation that was put in place last year. It has to do with if we are leasing anything, copiers, depending on the amount is going to depend on whether we're going to have to follow that. We didn't last year, but we have to at least address that. Basic instruction, this decrease relates to the reclassification of the teacher's salaries, about $2.1 million that's going to be covered by the WKKF grant. I think we'll probably have more discussion on that. The added needs, just the increase relates to additional grant funds we were awarded. Instructional support, the decrease relates to staff positions being expensed to grants more instead of to the general fund. Maintenance operation, this decrease relates to the new maintenance company. They provide all their own cleaning supplies, all their own equipment, so we haven't had to purchase any of that. Central support, increase in expenditures due to the payout of stipends, which were grant funded as well. Community services, again, the increase there is due to the increase in the grant funding. And the capital outlay, said what is left is related to the building projects that they're working on. The state has extended that for, I believe, 15 additional months to be able to spend that. The cutoff was September 30th, and we knew we were going to make it. So we are going to have that extended. On the general fund, be it resolved the resolution for the general fund appropriations for Battle Creek Public Schools for the 23-24 school year. A resolution to make appropriations to provide for the expenditure of the appropriations to provide for the distribution of the general fund income received by the district. Be it further resolved, the total of 18 mills are budgeted for operations against property except homestead and qualified agricultural property. Be it further resolved, the total revenue and undesignated and unreserved fund balance estimated to be available for appropriations in the general fund is listed below. Our total revenue that we are proposing for year-end, $76,336,603. Our expenses that we have budgeted for, $72,541,09, and puts us at a budget excess of $3,473,015, and that ends up to be a 34.21 fund balance. Questions on that right now, or will we wait?
So I'm going to go through the budget presentation. I wanted to introduce also Mitch Fowler is in the room. He is the director of our grants and federal programs. So as we talk about grants, he'll be able to answer those questions. Brenda's on deck to answer questions specific to the rest of the budget. But we tried to make this as succinct as possible so that you get a clear picture of how we ended 23-24 and how that impacts 24-25. So I'm going to start by just saying and reminding us that our North Star is ensuring that all students are at or above grade level in reading and math. Our primary goal is to ensure that every student achieves grade level proficiency in reading and math, a crucial foundation for their individual dreams and future aspirations. So through strategic funding and zero-based budgeting, the 24-25 budget continues to focus on aligning the budget with our strategic goals, creating an equitable and supportive educational environment, and ensuring all students, especially Black boys, achieve and exceed reading and math proficiency. Those are our focus areas. And why we continue to have a laser-like focus on Black boys is because they are the they are the lowest achieving subgroup in our data, and we believe that a rising tide raises all boats. So if we put in place practices that support those who are situated furthest from success, we will see increases in all of our students' success. With that being said, Brenda just kind of walked you through the budget and the revenue. And I think what's important to understand from here is that we are ending with a $3.4 million add to the fund balance. But what's important to note from a board perspective is that fund balance is non-recurring. And so you can't use that on salaries because salaries are recurring expenses. You might consider that if necessary, you might dip into the fund balance for reserves. So things that you want to reserve some of it for, right? However, it's also to be careful that you don't start to spend that, which is what Battle Creek Public Schools did in the past, which got us to an 8% because we didn't right size along the way. And so what we're trying to be very conscious about is right sizing along the way. With that being said, you will notice that our fund balance from 2016 to our projected at the end of 2024 is a considerable increase to end next year at around 34.2%. So the most important is looking forward. When you think about our revenue by source, which is a lot of the questions I receive, $45 million comes from state. That includes grants, though. That is not just state per pupil foundation allowance, it's also grants. Another percentage of our funding revenue comes from local sources. The majority of that is the W.K. Kellogg Foundation grant, as well as there are taxes in there. Is that correct, Brenda? Yeah. And then the second largest portion are federal funds. And then we talked about inflows and other. So to make up our total 24-25 general fund budget revenue, projected revenue, I will say. This is a overview of the grants, both federal and state, that we receive and the amounts that account for that. The important part to understand in this is to see how much of our budget is anchored on non-recurring funding. And so this funding comes in to provide us with supplemental resources to meet the academic, social, emotional needs of all of our students. And in your packet, we gave you sheets that also discuss what those grants can be used for. Along the way, this is a work session, so if you have questions, just ask. So how do we spend our money? The majority of our funds go towards basic programs. Then what you see here is for instruction, and then the categories for support services are broken out here. Okay. That huge capital outlay, a lot of that is the finishing of the ESSER work. So here's what I really wanted to point out. Last year, our revenue was $77.6 million. This year, last year revenue was $76.3 million. Our projected revenue for next year is $77.5 million. A lot of that is grants. Our expenses, however, remain the same. Or actually our expenses increased for 24-25 by $4.7 million, which is a 7% increase. So what we see is that our revenue has an increase, a 2% change, but our expenses have a 7% change. And so that's going to require us to have some conversations about what we can put on the stop doing and continue doing list.
So for expenses, those are not one time, or are those recurring expenses? So we anticipate it will continue to be about 77 going forward?
Correct. The majority of that is recurring expenses, given that almost 80% of our budget is personnel. Right. The other reason that I provided you with the cost center budgets in your packet, the cost center budgets are each building's budget, and you can notice in there that there's not much fluff in those budgets as far as supplies and materials. We supplement that a lot with grant funds. It's mostly people. So we are projected at the end of 24-25 to have a $45,000 surplus, but what's really, really important about that is that a lot of that, it's being upheld by W.K. Kellogg Foundation grant, and which will be rapidly decreasing over the next couple of years. So here are the notes. At the start of the 23-24 school year, we made significant investments in our teachers by raising their salary levels. This was a good thing to do because our turnover rate went from 30% to 10%, and we have significantly decreased our vacancies. The current budget reflects a 3% compensation increase. I know I came to the board thinking about 5%, but given where we are financially, I'm asking for a 3% compensation increase for all non-bargaining unit professionals and administrators. The revenue is currently projected for a per pupil increase of $220 and a slight decline in enrollment of about 2%, which is based on our enrollment study. Other considerations, what we are seeing is that our salary and benefit increases are outpacing our revenue increases from the state. So this new grant, this new fiscal year has a $1.8 million increase in salaries and benefits. Our heating and electric is projected to increase by $182,000. We have a transportation increase of $450,000, and that is the middle ground. Best case scenario would have increased by $600,000, but our budget can't support that right now. So this, that $450,000 does fund all of our current routes and tries to add a couple more. Okay. What's really significant is recently, just this past week, we were notified that A&J, Verona, Lemoore Park, and Post Franklin will not have 21st Century grant funding for next school year. And so what we have tried to do in this budget is move around some of our other grant sources to continue to fund after-school programming, but we will have to think creatively about how we offer that. We've set aside the funds, but we now need to understand how we might manage those 4 programs if they are not under the guise of 21st Century. Questions about that?
Do you know what happened?
We just received a letter that that grant did not get funded. So they don't tell you why. They just say it was a competitive process, and this one grant was not funded. And then they say in that letter it said, we encourage you to continue to provide the same level of after-school program.
Wow.
And to be clear, this is in addition to the schools we already have. They don't have, like Fremont, for example. Is that the only one?
So now you'll add Fremont and those 4 buildings
5, okay.
that are not covered by 21st Century.
So who covers Dudley?
21st Century.
21st Century does Dudley also.
And so I'll go back to this slide.
Transportation increase.
So you see we have a 21st Century Grant N2, 21st Century Grant O. Those are and then there's a 21st Century Grant N1. Those 3 grants cover the rest of the district, but we did not get the grant that was going to fund these other schools. They're all on a cycle. So once that grant ends, we have to apply again every time.
Oh.
Yes.
Is there a risk of them continuing to fall off?
So they did suggest that we apply again, and we will. So right now we're going to try to use some of our other grant funds to provide programming and hopefully apply again.
That hurts.
Was that the first time in a long time we haven't gotten that grant? Because I don't
Yes.
ever remember that
This is the
happening.
first time since I've been here.
And the transportation increase, is that part of the increase might be minor, but Northwestern closing, are we having more routes or more buses?
No, it's actually their salary and benefit increases, so in addition to some routes and after-school programs. That passes through on the contract.
Looking at the heating and electric projected, or do we anticipate any changes in that with the new HVAC systems coming online, like more energy efficient, or because there's more air conditioning total, is that gonna go up, like?
We might go up. I guess that's a good question for maybe Josh to answer,
Yeah.
but we'll take that into account.
And I know also the more you update, the more energy efficient they become. Nowadays, everything's getting more and more and more efficient, which is great. I just wonder if that'll even out, or if it's gonna be.
That's a very good question, so I'm not sure, but keep that in mind.
So when will we know about the schools that aren't gonna be funded, and if we're able to reconfigure other grants to make this work and happen? Because I feel like that's a big fix for us.
It is.
In our families, like,
It just added a layer of work for this central office
Okay.
team. We're going to have to figure out partnerships, look at community. So we are running behind the 8 ball because, to your point, school starts in August. We have less than 8 weeks to actually try to figure out a plan. First step was to find funding. But you're going to see later in this that there are some other funding issues that we have as a result of these grants kind of sunsetting, that we'll have to think creatively how we get this work done.
21st Century State.
State grant. It's state. It's federal. Federal. Sorry. Thank you. Federal. Okay. So, a really good point in this is that 3% of the 24-25 budget is upheld by WKKF funds. So, I want to highlight that because there's $2 million worth of salaries that have to be considered. We have to find $2 million in reductions in order for us to continue financial solvency. That makes sense? So it's a temporary fix, but if we keep doing business, we can't keep doing business the way we're doing business because we're $2 million over what our expected revenue is. But we're balanced for right now, and we're not making any cuts or layoffs. It's just, let's be mindful of what's coming forward, okay? Adding to that, we need to gradually phase out ESSER funds, which must be spent by September 30th, barring just some of the construction fees that are happening. So when people say, okay, why not move it to ESSER? Well, it's only 2 months into the school year. It's not a full year. We need to make sure that we do some one-time expenditures by September 30th. So, budget reductions and unfunded requests. And so, as you know, we go through the zero-based budgeting process. Here were some of the things that we could not find in the budget, given that we are kind of needing to right size. There was a request for school furniture replacements, so we have that on the list to think about how we might creatively find funding for that. We need $1.5 million a year for the next 3 years, is that correct? Yes, 3 years to do the security camera upgrades and replacements. Yeah, 1.5 a year for 3 years. That's how much that will cost us, not in the budget right now. There were some interior and exterior maintenance requests above and beyond just our general maintenance that we don't have the funding for right now. Buildings asked for funds for staff and student incentives and field trips. And so we've talked about they need to really think about how to leverage PTAs and PTOs and that kind of thing. The athletics department wanted 3 vans. We were able to find 1 in the budget. We don't have the money for a Springfield resource officer, a communications specialist, and summer school 2025 is not in the budget right now.
That's the blast or something different?
Bearcat Blast.
Okay.
Now, this does not take in, we don't know what kind of grant carryover money we will have, and so we will reserve summer school for carryover, which would be in our title budgets, but that doesn't come across to us until somewhere around September, October. So as we prepare for 25-26, the work's going to begin immediately in the fall of 2024. We are going to have intensified budget conversations that will help us plan and prepare for further reductions, and we will continue to keep the board informed on the progress and next steps.
When you have those discussions to prioritize what to find funding for, what money do you use Just like looking at that list, how would you prioritize what you?
Impact and return on investment. So just because we're already always doing it, we want to see what kind of impact that has that had. That will be one. Conversations with the community as well as the schools to understand what they would prioritize helps us put that in perspective. So those are the kinds of conversations we'll have. And then it also will have to be anchored on our strategic planning process that we're launching in July.
I would just say my comment would be make sure we prioritize safety and security. I always say that, but sometimes the things that don't bring budget per se get deprioritized, but we want to make sure that we think about that across our district.
I hear that loud and clear. And so I will say that we have the opportunity to go for a bond in May. That's work, and we're going to need people to tap in. But the bond, here's the part about this. The bond is just the savings from our initial bond, which would be a zero tax increase to our community, zero cost to the community. It's just because we've saved money on the initial one, you can't just spend that money, you have to ask the community, can you spend it? And so I would love to ask for a zero cost bond, and that is a whole nother campaign, but that could cover the security cameras, investments in our athletic department, those things that we can't find in our regular general fund. So I will be coming back to the board to ask permission to launch a no-cost bond, and then everybody has to tap in, right?
Yeah, and I would just also encourage to keep an eye out for grants. I think Lily was able to get their second resource officer through a grant. So we should just be mindful to keep an eye out for stuff like that. I don't look for them, but if I see something, I'll obviously tell you.
Well, my concern is the after-school program because we have so many parents that really depend solely on those after-school programs till they get off work to pick their kids up. That's an issue.
So, it's opportunity costs. What we're going to have to decide is, do we have social emotional, do we have all of these wellness individuals during the day, or do we have after school programming? We can't have, we're at choices now. So that's what happens when you're heavily grant funded, right? They're not forever and for always. And to the point about writing a grant for an SRO, we keep our SRO because it's in the general fund, but we wrote a grant for like more behavior support. That grant's ending, and so now I have a person that doesn't have
Operationalize it.
Right. It's that soft funding is really hard, and so again, we got to really work on increasing. And we talked about this last time, increasing enrollment. That's the stable money that comes in, while also decreasing some of the supports that haven't had the most impact.
So let me ask you this, what is the magic number of enrollment that we need to increase to sustain our budget?
So the initial calculation, I need to do it again, but my initial calculation when we started the transformation was 150 students a year.
And
And that was based on the fact that 3,000 live in our catchment area, but choice out.
So 150 additional kids.
Over our current enrollment. Now, of that 3,000.
So we need, okay.
I saw that it looks like the projection is to go down though next year. It's a little bit. And you said that was based on a survey? And that's-
So they do it by birth rate. Right, and so, but there are so many factors that, they projected we'd be losing 300 a year, and we haven't,
So that
so.
gives me a little bit of hope because, birth rate is one thing, but we've done so much, including the advantage, obviously, the biggest thing, but other things too, I think that I'm being cautiously hopeful.
Yes, well, we beat projection every year for the last couple
Yeah,
of
oh, that's my next question was how accurate has that been, so, okay.
It has not been, but we also want to be safe. We also don't,
Yeah.
right, we also don't know what kind of, the other thing, you have to adopt as a board a budget by June 30th, but we don't even have a state budget yet. So all of this is like our best guess, which is why we call it a close estimate.
Next question, how accurate has it been? So that's good to hear. Okay, so we want to be safe. You want to play it safe. I get that. I think that's absolutely,
Conservative.
absolutely. Yep.
I'm glad to hear somebody else beside me jump on the safety thing, because without safety, other programs.
Kids in the district and we all that. Everybody's kids want to keep safe. So with the fund balance, I saw that it's increased. Is there a certain like sweet spot that we want to keep it at? I know obviously we don't want to start spending and just constantly having a deficit, but 34% seems healthy.
Very healthy.
Yeah, so have we thought about, well, maybe in the interim, can we dip into that for certain amounts? Or what's our thought process around if budgeting doesn't come through, but we have this surplus, how do we still utilize that and then in the interim still find additional funding so we don't keep going that deficit?
Do you want to talk to that or?
Yeah, the board policy is that we maintain a 20%.
10. It's not 20, is it? We looked it up.
I thought it was 20. I thought I read that it was 12. Okay.
I know you said 20 and I was like, I don't think it's 20, but
15, is that?
That was 15.
I thought it was 17.5.
we looked it up. You're right. It's 10. Yeah.
I would think 15.
It's 10 is the board policy, but that was because it was at 8. And we were like, no, we want to up it to 10. But the state average and recommendation is 15.
15.
Yes.
We don't
15.
want to be at 5.
Because 5 is early morning, yeah, and intervention.
We're
Yeah,
more
and
than the average.
we are able to dip into the fund balance, like she said, for things that we want to reserve funds for. We can set those aside. But remember that just keeps going. The fund would just, we don't necessarily make it up the next year. It just comes to where we do the intense process for the budget, making sure that, we're not spending things that we don't need to be.
Any other questions?
Sounds like there's some, sounds like there's some room though, to your point, like, no, we don't want to dip into it, but we also don't necessarily need to keep adding to it. Like, we're at an okay spot, we could, there's a little bit of, was it 2 something, there's some play there a little bit at least. That is also a benefit.
So we will want to do a really good mid-year budget review, because if we are ahead, then what we will come back and say is like, can we go ahead and spend 1.5 on the security cameras? Because that's a one-time fee. Let's take that out of the fund balance, and because it's safety and security, it's necessary, right? That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and we will do mid-year, probably starting November, December, and then bring it to the board probably in January.
That is my goal. I really wanted to, I was hoping to come today with a recommendation for the reserve funds, but there were too many moving parts with all these grants. But I really would like to come forward with a recommendation to use some of the reserve funds for our security camera upgrades, because I just believe that's something we need to do. So.
It is.
Well, especially if it's directly related to the ability to recruit and retain students. So I think what prioritizing should be whatever is highest when it comes to why we're not able to recruit and retain. And if safety and security, that should be important anyway, right? And I also imagine that it's connected to concerns, right, or the ability to recruit folks to the district.
Anything else on this one?
The after-school program, is the grant that we get that we didn't get this year, is that just a yearly thing, or is that what's the?
How often can we apply?
I believe they're gonna have the next cohort will be available during the same time frame next year, so it'll be cohort E.
So then, I know for the ESSER funds, you said like we need to do like one-time expenditures. Couldn't we do one-time expenditure for this coming year and then reapply again this time next year for?
Those salaries go all year. They're not just, right? And so that's why you can't do salaries with that money. You have to pay those salaries all the way through June or whatever. And I can't front load any money. They actually look for the receipts.
So it's not like sign a contract with a vendor to run it, you just pay for that contract, they don't count that?
Have to have it expended within the window. It's just like if we order something right now and it does not make it here by June 30th, it hits next year's budget and we're out of luck.
So let me, never mind. I was gonna say the summer school, half the day is run by the district, right? And the other half is run by.
Yes. So we could have summer fun, but we want academic programming, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking about our credit recovery programs, all of that stuff. So again, we're making some shifts. We're meeting with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation because we still have that grant, move around some funds to allocate for other things. People will ask, okay, well, you increase salaries. We had to in order for us, right? Like that was a conscious decision. And we're going to make some adjustments because that should be our first priority, is to make sure kids have access to high quality staff. Right. We actually have talked about A and B at the same time. But I want to also make a point because there were questions about middle MSC, Math and Science Center, and outdoor education. I really need the board to lead with an understanding of how those two things are funded. So the Math and Science Center and the outdoor education are separate budgets from our general fund. So a lot of people will ask us, well, why don't you just give the Math and Science Center more money? We cannot. They service 17 districts that are not our tax base.
Right.
So you can't underwrite the Math and Science Center. It has to come in budget. If it does not come in budget, you have to cut over there. You can't supplement it with our own general fund dollars. For whatever reason, some people don't understand that. So the design of the Math and Science Center, literally, we are just the fiduciary, right? We get a 0.51 FTE, not a full FTE for every student. And the rest of that budget is offset by Serial City Science. It's why we own and operate Serial City Science. So if it makes a profit, that profit is designed to support the Math and Science Center and continue the programming at the level that it's at. Okay? If it doesn't make a profit, then you have to make adjustments to the Math and Science Center. And like all businesses, Serial City Science was impacted by the pandemic. And this is the first year since the pandemic that it's projected to have a profit. And we have some endowments that we kind of use, but again, endowments are just like fund balance, right? You can't keep tapping into them or you will destroy the program. So the other part of that is the outdoor education center right now is running at a what deficit? What's the cost?
They are about
$300,000. So we take $300,000 from the general fund budget and supplement the outdoor education center to keep it running. Okay? It is not self-sufficient. So those are some of the decisions that we have to continue to make. So I will get questions like, why don't you just pay for all the kids to go out to the OEC? We already do, to a point, and we cannot afford to do that. That's why we have to have some payment from our students. Sometimes we can't just underwrite it. It isn't fiscally available to us.
Maybe they could do the summer school.
Right, but that's still us paying them because we own it, right? We have to find the money for that. So, but there is an amazing business plan put in place. They are already trying to get more events out there to make it more of a business and not just an arm of our school. Upgraded the Wi-Fi, which was a complaint from people, so that we can maybe now go out and venture into the banquets and those kinds of business areas. And so we'll talk a lot. Retreats, yes. So if we can, go ahead.
It was just, we just actually just had one of the schools out there, we just had their prom.
Oh yeah, Bellevue.
Bellevue, I remember seeing that on Facebook.
We're working on those type of things. We have Lincoln upgrades. We're really looking to change that business model so it can get close to supportive. If any of you guys have seen the movie with Jimmy Stewart and some of us has, where at the end of the thing he only has $2 left, that's going to be my goal, is to have OEC 1 year just make a $10 surplus. We're not pulling on And that would be amazing, because again, of the things we do, and don't get me wrong, we have people wanting us to sell off and sell some of the land.
They want it all the
Oh, I
time.
bet.
We're not gonna do that.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Stewart.
The other important understanding about Math and Science Center is because those teachers are still under the Battle Creek Teachers Union, they also receive the compensation, significant compensation increases, but they don't get the funding alongside that. So that's where the business model comes in. So all of those benefits and salaries went up, which means that we have to have a profit go up in order to cover all those. So that's where you see the tug and pull with the Math and Science Center.
Thanks for the clarification, because just like with the Serial City, had no idea that weekend printing and all that other stuff that the community needed to know.
Yes, but that, and when you purchase from that,
Yeah.
you are supporting the Math and Science Center.
Are we putting like budget into marketing materials for that? Cause it's helpful, like I was handing out the cards you gave me, to different churches and vendors, and then even at work, just letting people know, hey, this is an option. We all go places around the community. Are we like thinking through?
Do you want to come forward?
Sure.
A little bit about that?
So one thing I will say, and I don't know if it's in the finances, we did increase what we've done with the print shop, because I did see that was truly underutilized resource. When I went in there and saw what our facilities are and what we print and what we do for Serial City Science alone, that's why I said, you know what, why don't I go to some of these funeral homes, some of these churches? And if you look at our finances, that's one thing that is the bright spot, although we're not doing well with the kids. I budgeted our print shop to be at least a 30% increase this year, just because of that. And if we can continue to move on, we can build up that. The one point that Dr. Carter alluded to, that part about the increase of funds for the teachers at Math and Science was one that was, I don't think it was budgeted for 100%. So when that came in, that hit us real hard, and that's one of the things, as I came in, said I'm a fiscally minded person. When I saw that, I said, why is there that gap? They said, well, we compensated, but because we compensated, and I had to understand what .49 was, I was not understanding that, but now I do. So part of that is getting the print shop up. I've also asked the PAC community, other 17 schools, I've asked them, well, we're going to increase the cost of those lease kits, so we can get some sort of revenue, because again, that's that whole model that we do have to look at, see what can we do to increase the revenue, because our hands are tied. There's certain things that we can't do. We will be looking at repurposing our kits. We hear our consumers, they say those science kits are very dense. So we're going to be looking at those over the summer, not this summer, but next summer, and doing to a Serial City Light, where hopefully then if we listen to our consumers, maybe we can drive up the price as well. So we're looking at some different strategies to do that, but the camp, like I said, the print shop, please do. Remember, I can't advertise, but we can market.
The market, absolutely.
We can market. So please do market, and that's something that we can do continuously, and I appreciate the support of you guys putting it out there, because when it was in the Bearcat alum, we got some calls, and
Great.
people have been calling us, and I will tell you, our prices are very competitive. I mean, they're extremely competitive, so if you get the opportunity, please do.
And are people able to go to the OEC or call and book retreats and everything now?
Correct, yep, that's all you got to do, because we also, as we mentioned that one, the WINCA update, which one thing I love about the district is we do have those pots of money. So when we looked at what, I talked to Blake about what we could do, he said WINCA needs an upgrade. So we basically cleared some trees, we had new ceiling installed, we got new flooring going in, and we actually do have one organization coming in, it's a dance group coming in that should net about $30,000. Now that's a drop in the bucket, but what that does is also just start turning that ship around. And that's what we want to do. So it's going to take a while to turn this ship around, but we do need to get those things coming in, and that Winker cabin is going to be wonderful. As I mentioned, with the prom being there, band camps, other opportunities that are there, because we have a great facility. I'm a camp guy. That 175 acres there that's out there for people to come and take advantage of, it's great. But what we have to do is get that outside in. We got to get that outside revenue in. That's what's going to be the fuel to turn that ship around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there are no other questions on the budget, we can go to the tax report.
Any other questions on the budget? Wonderful. Okay, Now we'll go to the L4029 tax rate request form. Linda?
Is there anything specific to present on that, Brenda?
There was a change in the debt ones. I don't have a copy of it,
I have one here.
but the debt ones changed slightly. So you have a copy.
Here you go.
I have it in the flash drive as well, if you need to.
Yeah, I got with PFM, our bond people, and they do a calculation each year based on what the county sends us. And so the debt fund, this debt fund 07 was at 1.94, so that has gone up to 2.75, 2.075. And the debt 21 fund was at 0.81, and that actually went down a little bit. But we don't expect any impact from the taxes on it. But it's have to approve those.
That will be up for approval next week.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. Okay, moving right on. Any more public comment? Thank you. Anything else to come before the board? If not, meeting's adjourned.
45, I'm that.
You're right.
I'm that.